Okay, having a look at this Paco RMIB milk tank. So it's a chilled water one, makes an ice bank and then pumps the chilled water around to cool the milk. And it's run out of ice for this morning's milking. It's got a timer in there which brings the compressors on at 11 o'clock at night, and they can run around till 9 in the morning, and that was an hour and a half out, but we've confirmed that the time's actually going around. I think it's probably just out where the clock's changed and it's probably a power cut, so we don't think that's an issue. We found there's a pneumatic module on top of that contactor there. That's this thing here, which is a 10-second time delay before the second unit kicks in, which is the one that wasn't running this morning. And it's just a little pneumatic timer. That piece there is pulled in. When the contactor pulls in, it pulls that in, and then there's a time delay depending on how you set that dial as to when the contacts make across. There's a normally open and normally closed set of contacts, so I quite often see them on star delta time contactors to do the 3-second delay or whatever it's set to. But this one should be set at 10 seconds, and I've timed that at 1 minute 30 something, so it's quite possible it could have been that, and it may have just never switched on. I've had them where they do that, where they get that warm, they don't ever come on until you've played with them a bit, and then they might be alright and then play up again. So that was a potential problem. But then we had noticed that one of the two units was turning off when it should have been on, and that was the one that's playing up, which is this solenoid valve here. Let's turn the light down a bit. So we've got two separate coils, two separate systems. This one was shutting off, and they're run off of these 3 ice bank sensors. So you've got one that's very near the coil, which is a low ice sensor, which will override the time clock if it runs out of ice and the milk is still warm. That one comes into play, and it can bring the units on just to make a 1/4 inch of ice, so it will cool the milk and get it cold for the tanker. But then it will stop, and then it will wait until the timer brings it on at 11 o'clock at night. And then you've got 2 other ones, which is your plus and minus 50% ice bank probes, and they are set so that if you're not filling the tank, if you're only half filling or below half filling the tank, you can run it on the minus 50, and it'll make less ice. So obviously the more ice it makes, the less efficient it is, because the pipe is doing the cooling, and it's got to cool all the way through to the outer edge of the ice to bring any heat in. So the thicker the ice, the less efficient it is. So you can gain a little bit by not making too much, you just make enough. So we've had problems in the past where these switches that go between plus and minus 50% play up, because they're switching low voltage and they're really mains rated switches, so the contacts don't ever, they get a bit of corrosion on them or something, and then they don't, a little bit of resistance mimics having ice on the sensor. So I think we've confirmed the switches are okay. Those have been changed in the past, because the originals are Telemecanique, I think, or the Square D, which I think actually is Telemecanique now. And these ones, I'm not sure, these are some other ones that I've got. It might be IMO or something or other, Sparky Shop was selling at the time. So we've confirmed that the switches work okay. So you've got one set of wires for one probe on the top block, and then another set on the bottom one. These are just contact blocks that stack up. But we'll pop that off and see if we can show what we've found. Okay, that top block is the minus 50% probe on this switch. I'm assuming it is on that one as well. And the bottom one is the plus 50%. So I've got this little magnetic jumper wire which you can only use on low voltage. If I pull that off, you should see that sensor, that's the board, that is the ice bank control for that. I just heard a click and the valve shut, and I can hear it pumping down. If I put that back on, I can hear the solenoid click. So that's confirming that that switch is working. So it's looking like it's the sensor, the ice bank sensor, that's playing up. So we'll put a new sensor on there and see how it works then, and change that timer. That just clicks in. Where is it? Yeah, that little lever there. I think you pop that up, and then you can just slide it off and slide the new one in, and just put the settings. So 10 seconds or so. Okay, we've got the old one out. It's probably original. It's 26 years old, I think. The tank was new in 95. So, anyway, what I've taken to doing is on the terminals you don't use, I wind the screws in, and that way, if you go to work on something and the wires come out for whatever reason, you've got a better than, well, on this one you'd know it's got to have come out of that one because that one's tight, but it can help you narrow down where things should go back if they can't physically go. It couldn't have physically come out of that one. Other things, I've seen them where the screws rattle loose and they can fall out, cause problems. That should just click in like that. So, yeah. And then we've got the two wires here. And then that one's got to go in there, so I'll get them done. Hailstones by the sound of it. Okay. No, it's just a case of using the hose pipe. Trying to hold the torch and the camera at the same time to melt the ice around that sensor. That's the one. It's the one that sticks out the furthest. That's the one it runs on mainly. So you want to clean the ice away from it, top and bottom. We might be. I've got some that style, so hopefully we can leave the old clamp on there. It's just got two screws either side. Hopefully we can leave the clamp and just slide the new sensor in. And you want to make a note of where it is, so you get it set the same distance out. Otherwise it won't make enough or it'll make too much ice. If it makes too much, it'll make a big block, which will slow the cooling down because there's less surface area for the ice to melt from. Anyway. Okay, we've got the new sensor on there. It's quite awkward to do because that water's sort of at zero and the weather's not much better outside. I've got absolutely no feeling left in my hand now, so I can't feel a thing. So I've got to route that cable back up here, up through here and into that box, and then join it in where that one goes, and then try it. But I think I'll go and see if I can warm my hands up first because I can't feel a thing. Okay, we've got the cable fed up through here, back down and up again. Years ago I'd trim that short, made it look nice and tidy, but I've had problems with these probes and sensors in general, and I'm wondering whether moisture's getting down the wire and getting in, not so much these but actual temperature sensors. I've had them on these as well, and when you cut them back all the copper's gone black where it's corroded, so I kind of leave the wire as long as possible so any moisture that does get in to get down to ruin the connection inside there has got another metre or so to go through before it gets there. But yeah, I've had a lot of temperature sensors fail last few years under warranty, so I always leave the, just started doing it, so it's a bit too soon to say whether it works. Anyway, that's why that's like that. This was 23 and 25 they've got to go back into, so we'll get that done and then keep our fingers crossed it's going to work. Okay, so power back on, so because the power's come back on, that's going to do a 2-minute stir because it doesn't know what temperature the milk's at. That's been off, so that's out because you can see that's fully out. So I've turned the clock off. So if I turn the clock on, that should pull in, I think. That's in. That's one valve, and then 10 seconds later second one kicks in. So that delays the power to the second controller. So we've got that one is one of them, that Ranco one, which they've stopped making. That's the other one, for the one we've just done. And the third one is actually the level sensor for the wash, which is down here, which works on a similar thing. You've got this probe, and that senses when the water level comes up in that silicon tube, which is non-conductive. So as soon as the water comes up, it bridges the gap between the stainless and the sensor, and it knows it's got enough water in to wash. So that's why it's got 3 of them boards in there usually. You can tell the difference is the wash one's got an actual earth wire going to it, whereas the other one has the 2 whites. But that has worked. Let's make sure we've got this switch set right. That's on plus 50, which is the sensor we're using. So we've done that, we've done the sensor. And then the only other thing that's worth checking is the capacitors. We've got one for the chilled water pump, I think, or that might be the wash pump. I think that's the chilled water pump. And one for the agitator, because if they go, it'll trip the overloads, which are usually set to automatic reset on here. If the overloads trip, it shuts the whole cooling down and the display goes blank. Then when the power comes back on, it does a little self-diagnostic, but that can take a few minutes for it to reset. So if it keeps doing that during milking, you're not going to make any ice, and that is quite often when these get weak, so we'll check those. Yeah, I'll show you that again if I can get the... So that whole thing goes off. Then it does a self-diagnostic. Yeah, and that second one's 10 seconds later, which is off of that new timer. Right, tested the capacitor on the chilled water pump, and that was fine still. But the one on the agitator is showing, should be a 5, and it's showing 4.5. So it's 10% out. There's 5% tolerance, but I take that as a manufacturing tolerance. So if it was 4.75 when it was new, that's good. Or it could be 5.25 and it's still within spec. But it should stay at that for most of its life. When they start dropping is when they're wearing out. So that should read, it'll probably be 4.9 on that. This meter always reads slightly low compared to the other ones I've got. Anyway, it's been on there 18 months, so it might not do another 12 months without a breakdown, so it's cheaper to change it and come back out. Power's back on, so agitator's just fired up, so that sounds good. We'll run the chilled water pump up. There's that pump there, and that pumps the water down, got the spray rail halfway up from one near the top, so the water just runs down the outside. And then it's got a tap there, you shut off. It's open to milking and shut the rest of the time. It sends chilled water off to the plate cooler to pre-cool the milk before it gets into the tank, and that just returns on that pipe. It just dumps the water down the side. So that's all going. And that'll just do a 2-minute stir. So we've got to put that clock right. Now let's just give it a check over, look at the compressors, and that'll probably do. These are all original compressors and fan motors. They're 26 years old, I think. I can remember putting this in. You had a old Frigidaire condenser, the old semi-hermetic Frigidaire unit here, the old big cast iron job on the original tank, which would have probably been a simplex tank if you had a Frigidaire unit. Might have been a forward. car's still on R22. A few years back, before we weren't allowed to work on them, they had the oil sight glasses leak, so they've been changed. That's something that does go on these, you see how rigs go, something to keep an eye out for. But yeah, going well really for original contactors, everything.